Panic over President Biden's plummeting approval among voters. One recent poll finds the president underwater on major election issues, including inflation and immigration. Just 28% approval of handling of inflation, 26% on immigration, and even some in the liberal media are taking notice. Watch.
Look, let's just sort of put in context the politics of this for President Biden and how important it is. Immigration, he is down 26%. That is not good.
It's not good at all. And I think that part of the trip yesterday to Mexico by senior Biden administration officials was obviously to have these diplomatic conversations, but also to make the broader administration's point that this is a regional issue and sort of trying to blunt the criticism from Republicans. But that certainly doesn't change the fact that he's under considerable political pressure over immigration.
Oh, yeah, you can say that again. We've also seen poll after poll showing President Trump leading Biden in a hypothetical head-to-head matchup. That's reportedly caused some internal frustration among White House and campaign staffers, as well as President Biden himself. A former Obama advisor with this warning.
There is just this scary thing that overhangs everything about whether we're just too divided. It's just too late. There's too many silos. How am I going to reach all of the voters I need to reach, given all the media silos that there are?
The Wall Street Journal with this headline: Biden knew Carter was in trouble in 1979. Now he's in the same boat. It cites a quote from Biden in a local newspaper back from 1979 when Biden actually said this: "That man's in trouble, politically in trouble." Asked who he would endorse for president at the time, Biden said, "I'm not certain that's Jimmy Carter right now." The Journal puts it this way: both men struggled to sell legislative victories and retain the party's core voters as high inflation and foreign policy disasters eroded their support. And both men had a disconnect with voters that's leaving Democrats afraid that Biden could share Carter's political fate of being a one-term president. Jessica Anderson, the Sentinel Action Fund president and former executive director of Heritage Action, joins us. Also, Matt Bennett, Third Way co-founder and former Clinton White House deputy special assistant. Thank you both for talking to us. Jessica, there are two key topics heading into 2024. That's inflation and immigration. And as we just heard, according to a Monmouth University poll conducted between November 30th and December 4th, he flunks big time on both of those. 26% on immigration, 28% approval on inflation, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. It's almost too little too late. Would you agree?
I do agree. And the reality is, if President Biden can't unify his own party behind him, how can he be expected to unify the American people behind him? This sort of disarray and this fraction within the Democratic base just tugs at just how broken they are with the policies and how out of touch they are with the American people on every single issue, as your poll showed: immigration, the economy, family, culture. Even you look at the national security fights that we have right now in our country. Biden is out of step with what it will take to turn this country around and make life better for all Americans. And I think we're seeing that in full force here with this disarray and discontent within the party.
Matt, I don't know if the president actually listens to people within his own party, but when you hear the former Obama communications director, Jennifer Palmieri, basically calling the election in 2024 scary and basically saying that, describing the Democratic Party as completely too divided, saying herself it's too little too late. Does the president actually listen to people that disagree with him, or does he only listen to those who are I guess, whispering sweet nothings into his ear?
No, he absolutely listens to everyone, and he is paying close attention to these polls. He's frustrated by the polls. Of course he is. Look, you've talked about this on the show many times. The economy actually, on paper, if you look at the facts behind the economy, it's doing quite well. And if you look at the experts are predicting that the economy is going to improve substantially next year. Unemployment is going to be very low. Inflation is going to be very low. And the question is, will people over the course of the next 11 months feel that change? I don't know the answer to that, but I think that they will. And I think by the time we get to the summer, people are going to feel differently about the economy than they do right now. I don't know if they're going to feel differently about immigration. A lot of that will depend on whether Congress can get to a deal on immigration, and that some of that's going to be up to the Republicans. But the president's trying very hard to get to that deal, and I think that they're going to recognize that. The other thing I'll say is that his opponent in this race faces 91 criminal counts. That is far different than the opponent that Jimmy Carter faced in 1980, the extraordinarily popular Governor Reagan, and I think that's a big difference here.
Yeah, we are talking, though, right now about Biden and, whether or not, he has enough time to actually turn it around. When you say the economy, and I just have to call you on this, when you say the economy is doing quite well, comparatively speaking, no, it's not. I mean, under the Trump administration, it was doing better. Of course, it's got to go better because we were in the midst of a pandemic. Our economy, inflation obviously hit a rock bottom. So there's really not anywhere to go but up once you've hit rock bottom. Quite well. Tell that to the Americans that can't afford to buy groceries. They can't afford to put gas in their cars. I mean, if you compare to where we were 4 years ago, would you say it's going quite well? I'm going to go to you, Jessica.
Yes. If you look at the facts, gas is around $3 a gallon and going down. We're pumping more oil than ever. We're pumping more oil than we pumped under Trump. And the market is doing well. So for people who do have 401ks, that's doing extraordinarily well. But things do need to improve. We are not there yet. There's no question. But we have 11 months between now and Election Day, and all predictions from economic experts are that things are going to continue and improve. And I do think people are going to start to feel that. I agree that they're not feeling it yet, but they will. Will
they, Jessica? We have about a minute.
Yeah, they're not going to feel it because the reality is that the economic policies that the Biden administration has put forward and the debt and the spending and the overregulation is long lasting. These are not quick and easy fixes that can be overdone overnight. Look how long it took President Trump to turn the country around after Obama's miserable economic state. The same thing's going to be said about Biden.
Okay, that's all the time we have. Jessica Anderson, Matt Bennett, thank you both for talking to us. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.